Ditch those preconceptions, because despite appearances and what you might think, this isn't a synth, it's a time machine. A bit like someone's found long forgotten blueprints from the 80s and fast forwarded to the future, bringing them to life with 21st century technology. And bear with me here, because that's not too far from the truth actually, because this was born in the mind of Chris Huggett, and Chris Huggett was the designer of the Wasp and the Oscar, as well as the original bass station which had the Wasp's VCA and filter. And I have to say, the bass station, when it was first released, was an absolute revelation, because I could finally get 303 style things without a 303. Well, back to this anyway. Chris Huggett knew Paul from PWM from their time at Novation, and Paul got in touch to see if he fancied doing something together. Chris had had some concepts floating around for a while, and combining them with Paul's ideas, we get the Mantis. But unfortunately, Chris didn't live to see it completed. So to me at least, it's really like something that has been born in the 80s or been conceived in the 80s that's been brought back to life in 2024. So it's full of modern tech and manufactured with modern techniques, obviously, but it really feels to me like a vintage soul with a modern heart. Maybe I should have really started with the Invasion of the Body Snatchers analogy instead.
From deep space, the seed is planted.
So what do I mean by a vintage soul? Well, it's not as straightforward as you get with a lot of soft synths, for example. I mean, of course, we've got our oscillators, we've got LFOs, we've got a filter, we've got our envelopes, we've got an ARP, we've got a modulation matrix, as it were. Everything on here is familiar then. There's nothing out of the ordinary on the face of it, but like a lot of vintage synths, it does things to try and get round its physical limitations. We've got a duophonic mode here, and it was originally conceived as a duophonic synth, but not a duophonic like an ARP Odyssey, for example, that's got a single filter. On this, with it being duophonic and two filters, it acts very much like a two-voice polysynth. So if we add some envelope to the filter, add a bit of attack and put it into duophonic mode, you can hear that the second voice has got a filter envelope on it, which is something you couldn't do on the Odyssey, for example. But when we put it in quad mode, it gets even more interesting. You can hear the filters are shared between different voices, so you can hear the slight dip there, so you get these really nice, strange effects with it. And take the duophonic mode off. You can hear that sounds different to this. And then the signal path through the filter is different, so it gives you different flavors. So when I say it works within its limitations, it really does it. It's really clever. And I'm jumping into why I feel it's got so much character straight away before sort of going through each of the sections, because I just wanted to get across that this isn't like a sort of standard synth. It looks like a standard synth when you first get it out of the box, but once you start playing with it, you realize every section's got a little interesting quirk to it. And one of the very first things I noticed actually was just how nice it sounds. There's something really appealing about the tone, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I've put it away, I've played with it, I've come back, I've played with other stuff, and every time I come back to this, I'm like, oh, it feels nice. And the other thing I noticed with it is, it's just done it then, I'm using these iLoud monitors from IK Multimedia, and I've loved these since I got them a couple of months back. They're just really handy because they sit on the table and don't get in the way. But they can't quite cope with this. There's a lot more buzzes I'm getting out of them with this than anything else. I think it's just got so much tone or thickness or low end. There's something about it anyway that these speakers are a little bit uncomfortable with. And I think that's the same thing as I'm feeling in my body and in my ears. And it's got quite a rawness to the tone as well. They are digital oscillators, and if you play them high up, you will hear some aliasing. definitely doing it. And I don't mind that. That's why we like the Prophet VS. The Groove Synthesis third wave has a special vintage mode, so you can get that out of it. The Waldorf M has an 8-bit mode, especially to do this sort of thing. So it's something that we tried to iron out of synths back in the 90s, but actually it's got a real nice character to it. So this very much comes at you with a rawness, a very vintage sort of rawness, but it doesn't feel like it had to be that way. It feels like it's been designed in because it's just full of sweet spots. So once you start playing with it, you end up saving different tones straight away. And that's when you know you're onto a good thing. And I did say each of the sections has its own peculiarities. For example, we've got 2 oscillators and a sub, but we've actually got 4 oscillators per voice, which is 16 in total, plus noise, and you can do nice things with the noise. The LFOs have got a fade in and a fade out, as well as the one-shot mode, so they act as envelopes. And the envelopes themselves have got like a sort of trigger mode with this sustained fall, so you can trigger them like you would with a drum sample, for example. And they've also got a repeat mode as well. And those repeats go into FM territory. So everything on here has just got a little bit extra that you're not expecting. And I'll kick off actually by taking a look at these 4 oscillators you get on every voice. So looking here, we've got oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and a sub. But we've also got this density oscillator. So if we play oscillator 1, let's get an initial patch up. So initialize, where are we? That's oscillator 1 on its own. We blend between oscillators 1 and 2 with this. We don't have individual level settings. So yeah, very much Jupiter-like. So oscillator 1, oscillator 2. Let's detune oscillator 2. To oscillator tone. Let's take oscillator 1 off. Oscillator 2, as I said, it's got this density oscillator. So density rate is at the max difference, tuning difference between oscillator 2 and its density oscillator. So let's add some density. Again, a 2 oscillator tone. So bringing in oscillator 1 on top of that, and just detune the whole lot a little bit. That's a 3 oscillator tone. And then we've got the sub as well. So there's your 4 oscillators. And of course we can detune oscillator 2. And that's just a few moves from an initial patch. Sounds really nice. Down here, we've got oscillator drift. If you think the digital oscillators are too static, it goes really out of tune, this. So there's your 4 oscillators, and each of these oscillators can be wave shaped. And we can shape that sine and we change the harmonics if we go to the left or the right. So that's adding, that's 4, 6 and 8, that's adding your even harmonics. odd harmonics. I should really have remembered what it said in the manual. That was being modulated there with the shape mod parameter. Let's go to a triangle. So all the way to the left is your triangle. It's a bit like your wave folding it or something there. Then over to the sawtooth. So this is where you can get superstore style tones. And I used that to do a little demo to show how you can make a Hoover. Turns out you can, because you can modulate the shape of the sawtooth, which is what the Alpha Junos did. So we'll modulate the shape of Oscillator 1 with an LFO. We've got LFO 2 there. Let's turn that modulation up. You can hear the Hoovers in there already. The next big thing that turns it into a Hoover is to modulate the pitch of the oscillator with an envelope. Add a bit of attack and a bit of decay. Drop that cutoff. Add some sub. Add a bit of resonance so it pokes through the mix. And then add a whole load of chorus, which is what you did. You turn the chorus to the maximum almost on the Alpha Junos. And then we've dropped the volume there, but we're going to add a load of drive so that it sounds a little bit like it's being overdriven on a crappy 8-track. And then for the final little flourish, we're going to add some reverb. The trick to making things sound like crappy 90s reverb is to not have the time up too much, but put too much level on it. There you go, lovely early rave. And the next thing to do is just add a beat. So yes, you can Hoover with a Mantis. Anyway, I'm digressing from what was shown with the oscillators. We've then got a pulse. Everything you'd expect there. Then the next one is this really strange organ style thing. I think it's called a Shepard tone. And look at the frequency analysis on this. This is really weird. No matter what octave we play, we're still getting the same harmonics in there at the top end. I don't know what a Shepard tone is, but this is it, basically. Add in harmonics, a bit like the drawbars on a Hammond. Let's add some reverb to that. So just a very strange oscillator. I've not played with that too much, but I'm sure there's cool stuff you can do with that. Those harmonics being the same across the octaves is really, really odd. Never come across that before. And then we've got the wavetable. Not a massive expansive amount of tones in there, but it gives you the flavour of wavetables. And especially as I showed that aliasing earlier on, you do get that Prophet VS original microwave type flavour up there. We haven't quite finished with the sound sources yet because we do have noise in here as well. I did get told off by someone for saying it's got a noise oscillator on one synth because of course noise doesn't oscillate, but trying to be careful not to get in trouble. But if we go from there, so there, we've got noise. So this is the noise blend effectively. So we've got oscillator 1, 2, blend, and then the oscillators or the noise, or just full noise, or the sub as well. But the noise is interesting in that we hit shift and wiggle this, and we can take the amount of noise out, so it's almost like taking out the hits of the noise, if that makes any sense. Turns it down into little crackles. I really like this. So if we hold shift and bring that down further, it's almost like vinyl crackle. Or a Geiger counter. It just enables you to make really nice little lo-fi sounds. If we do a little bit of PWM, for example, and let's modulate the shape, oscillator 1 shape, LFO2. That little crackle in there, it just gives it a really nice lo-fi vibe. Bit of drift. Bit of oscillator 2 as well. Let's put PWM on oscillator 2. Oscillator 2 shape, it's on LFO2, let's put it on LFO1. So we've got one of each. Just that little hint of that noise is really nice. Something else that adds to its character, or its vintage character to me at least, is the reverb and the chorus, because these are really, really simple, but got a very much a Juno vibe around the chorus. If we go to an initial patch again, make it a quad, add some release. And just add some chorus. That's beautiful, isn't it? And that's a couple of moves from an initial patch again. And when you can get things that are that nice, that simple, you know you're onto a winner. This is changing the speed or the rate of the chorus and the amount of chorus. Then we blend it in with this knob. I love it around 1 or 2. Almost shockingly good how easy it is to do that. Let's add some of this reverb as well. Again, really simple reverb. We get quite a long time on it. If I just do a little hit maybe. Modulates really strangely. To me, it's got a little bit of a spring reverb vibe to it. That sort of ringing. Yeah, like a metallic ringing. But it's not one that you overuse this. Quite a long time and a little bit of level. Add a little bit more, or some of the chorus as well. Does really have that vintage spring vibe about it, doesn't it? But not as bad as a spring. Not a mad fan of spring reverbs in synths, but this one seems to work. And we've got a simple low pass and high pass, so. So it's not a big special effect reverb and it's not a big special effect chorus, but together they just add that little bit of extra functionality, extra tone. It would be nice if there was a delay in there as well, but I guess at some point with hardware, you've got to make a decision on what you're going to go with. And I don't know if delay would be more useful than reverb. Similar, isn't it? And just for the hell of it, let's make this into a bit more of a thicker tone. Add that density, bit of drift. Hopefully then you're beginning to understand the character of this. Although I am sticking to quite nice tones at the minute, it can do very dirty as well. Got this drive here. There we go. Let's take it back to an initial patch again. Just throwing a dirty one in because I have been very mellow with it so far. Underneath noise then, we've got ring mod, so not another sound source, but another source of all sorts of sonic exploration, I suppose. Let's bring it in. So we don't have FM, but the ring mod does those FM style clangs, doesn't it? And allows for some really dirty bass. Let's add some drive to it. Further in this section here, if we press shift, we can change the volume of the patch basically. So that's the volume of what's going into the filter in case you do overdrive it or distort it, which is quite easy to do when you've got the 4 oscillators, the ring mod and the noise. As I'm doing a lot of fiddling with the filter, let's take a look at that now. We've got 8 different filter modes, 12 dB and 24 dB. So that's all about if they're in series or parallel. When we're in duophonic mode, we've only got access to the 12 dBs. And that's because each of the voices, we can see the voice lights coming up here, has got their own. But when we're not in duophonic mode, I should say, we have 24 dB. So 12 dB. And then 24 dB. Definite differences there, and it's quite a nasty filter actually. Band pass, high pass, wide band and wide notch. That's where it's taking the two filters and putting one in high pass and one in low pass mode, and the other way around. So in wide band, compare that to standard band. So there is a difference in tone there, and then wide notch. Do like a notch. Nice, and then band pass and high pass. Tons of tone sculpting ability in that, and I did show the width earlier. I'll just show it again here. So if we go into one of the 12 dB modes, take out a quad. You can see there that we've got the two peaks. Bring them closer together and widen them. And that's how you get those vocal style tones, by picking out a couple of harmonics. But that doesn't work on the duophonic, as I said. If we go into quad mode, we've still got it there. And that's because when you're in quad mode, you've got the two filters separate. So one signal's going through one, another signal's going through another. But when you change it from quad mode to duo mode, it changes the setup there. So we lose control of the width. And like I said in the intro, that's to do with the routing of the filters for duophonic and for quad modes. This is probably best explained with an audio example. So starting in the quad mode but no duo mode, the filters are spread with the width parameter, and increasing the voice spread gives us loads of stereo movement. Engaging duo while in quad mode controls the stereo image more, but we lose the ability to spread the filter cutoffs. But whichever way you do it, it does sound very nice. did add some drive area. Let's just do a little bit more of that, shall we? The sawtooth, nice and quiet, because we're about to make it really loud. You can see it changing the shape there. Add some resonance. Take it off. Add it. So it does add a lot of beef. It also adds a lot of signal. It's quite hard to show in a demo because the volumes are going all over the place. That's why it's good that we have this shift and change the signal level going into the filter. So this is it on normal, basically. An awful lot of clipping happening there on that oscilloscope. In fact, let's add some ring mob there. So some dirty ass stuff you can get out of it. I think I've pretty much covered the filter there. We've got a width modulation knob to modulate that automatically with the mod routing, and obviously we can modulate the cutoff frequency. Let's take a quick look at modulation. I have mentioned that the LFOs have a single shot and the envelopes have got repeat modes as well, but the modulation works using this little mod routing section down here. We've got the control, the source and the scale. And this is really simple to use. What do you want to modulate? What do you want to modulate it with? And how you're going to control that. So almost like destination, source, and control. The wording on that's a little bit weird to me. But if you want to control the pitch of Oscillator 1, want to control the pitch, so hit pitch, it's being controlled by or modulated by LFO1. That's here. And the scale is full on, which means it'll do it all the time. So turn it up. Almost FM rates. And we've got 6 different controls for that. Let's put it onto joystick Y. Actually, I've not mentioned the third LFO yet. We've got 3 LFOs in total because we've got a third one for vibrato. That's not going at the rate of either of those. I think that's a fixed rate, so it's a bit, again, a bit like a vintage synth where you get the additional little vibrato LFO. We've got a fade in and a fade out on each of the LFOs. That's fading in and fading out. It's quite cool, and also a one-shot mode. If we press shift and sync, we can see this has stopped flashing. Let's put it on to, I don't know, this. One shot. This was a bit of a surprise. We don't actually just have the 2 LFOs plus the third LFO there. We've got 4 LFOs in each of these because we've got 1 per voice. If I put key trigger on, they'll reset as a player note. Definitely 4 playing if I hit them all together. That's what a single LFO would sound like, but this has definitely got 4 in there. So yeah, 9 LFOs, not 2 that you see on the front panel. Over to the envelopes then, ADSR envelopes. Let's just go back to an initial patch again. It's what you'd expect with an ADSR. No surprises there, but hit and repeat. We repeat between the attack and decay stages. So FM style stuff to be had in this. And also we've got this sustained fall parameter, which acts a bit like a trigger really. If I turn it on, because it's actually at 0 from the initial patch. Let's just get the repeat off. Let's put it onto a standard, what you'd expect an ADSR to do. If we bring this in, and we hold it on, it sustains, but it drops through that sustain. So if we want to do percussive hits, for example, so we get a bit like an, is it an attack release, but it's attack hold release or attack decay envelope? We got to demo that on the arpeggiator, so let's move over to the arpeggiator. It's a pretty simple affair, this. We can hold by pulling the joystick down. Put the arp on, maybe. Different modes, up, down, up and down 2. So one is Stranger Things mode and one isn't. One's inclusive and one's exclusive. So one plays the top and the bottom twice. This is Stranger mode. It's called exclusive. It doesn't play them both. As played and random. Octaves. Hear that alias in there. Really do like that. Sing and swing. And of course, all that can be tempo synced with your DAW. I've not mentioned actually that on the back we do have a USB-C in, and this is being powered by the USB-C, so you don't need the power block. And down here you've seen me use the octaves, the arp on and off, and the joystick. Actually, the joystick I've not really demoed yet. Again, let's go to a decent patch, shall we? And I wasn't a big fan of this when I first started playing it. But I've really come to quite like it. Putting the hold on the joystick is great when you're soloing. Really nice little touch. And there, the joystick's being used to modulate Oscillator 2. Not the pitch, it sounds like the pitch, but it's Oscillator 2 wave shape. We know that because if we hit Oscillator 2 shape, it's joystick Y. And it's full on there, and that means that once you're using joystick Y, it doesn't need an LFO or an envelope. And changing the mode takes the pitch bend off. So now we're not got pitch bend or modulation. We're just doing what this mod routing is set up to do. Put the mode on. We've then got the LFO3 and pitch bend. I do think that's about it though. So, I mean, I've been saying how great I think this is and what I really like about it. And there's got to be some things that aren't ideal. I think I did mention that it would have been nice to have delay in there. We don't have on the ARP, we don't have any gate time. We just got to play with the envelopes. That would have been nice to have on there. A sequencer perhaps would be nice. Oh, and a chord mode as well. I do like a chord mode because I'm not great at playing it sometimes. And when I'm doing the demos, I use chord mode quite a lot. It means I can play something nice and chordy and then tweak around with stuff. And it's actually just a classic way of doing old 90s stuff, isn't it? Trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, maybe some more modulation options. It's not a big one, that. It is what it is. They've made a decision and stuck with it, as it were. It does help give it that vintage vibe, and those limitations do help you to discover other ways of doing things, do create other types of sounds and stuff. So it's not a massive one, that. But a unison mode, actually got 16 voices on it. It'd be nice to have a big, fat unison mode. Again, not a biggie. Hasn't got sync, hasn't got FM. But you don't really miss them until you sit there to think of the cons and what hasn't it got. It's got so much in there, you just really do enjoy playing it. Its nearest competitors, I think, will be something like the Take 5 or the Tio from Sequential and Oberheim. I have got a Take 5 and I do like it. It's a little bit more flexible perhaps than this, but it's not as instant. There are a few menu options and stuff like that on there. And if you are looking for a Take 5 or a Tio, this should definitely be on your list to look at. I know this isn't a full 5-voice polyphonic synth. It's only 4-voice. Is it sort of para, sort of polyphonic, and they're full 5-voice polyphonic. But if you are in the market for something that's a little bit different, got a really, really vintage feel about it. And the vintage feel to me is all about the way you interact with it. There's no menus in here. It just makes you want to play with it, and there is something nice about that. One thing people have mentioned to me is that they don't think it looks as good as it sounds, and I have to agree with that. I hadn't thought about it until somebody told me, you know, that they didn't like the look of it particularly, but they loved the sound of it. And in fact, over in NAMM, people were talking about, have you heard the Mantis? Not have you seen the Mantis? Because it does sound really, really nice. But it brings me back to another 80s analogy, I suppose. It's not the glamour girl, it's Winona Ryder in Heathers.
You a Heather?
No, I'm a Veronica.
Sexy, it might give it more curbside appeal, but it would have cost implications. A large metal case costs a lot more to make, and PWM do want to keep things as affordable as they can. And also, it's not cosplaying a vintage synth. It is what it is. And as I say, it never bothered me until somebody said it, and I'd sort of given it some consideration because a couple of people brought it up. But actually, on the whole, it is itself. It's doing its own thing and will become a future classic. I reckon this is such a nice thing to play. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell, share, all that sort of stuff. As you know, this channel is funded by my affiliate links, my YouTube ads, and by my wonderful patrons who, for the price of less than a dodgy coffee a month, get access to patches, samples, tutorials, and other little goodies, and do take a look at my starskycard.com website. Again, there's patches, there's samples, there's stuff to buy, and there's free bits and bobs on there as well. As I always say, it is nice if you pick up some of the cheaper bits because it all does help to support the channel, although nobody ever does, so I don't know why I keep on saying it. Anyway, thanks for staying to the very, very end, and I will see you next time.